Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Federal Crowdsourcing Webinar Series. Code 7, Crowdsourcing for Code. My name is Nicole Williams. I'm the Communications Director for Code.gov. We want to welcome you all to this talk, which is hosted by Challenge.gov, managed by GSA. Challenge.gov serves as both the official listing of prize competitions across government, as well as a centralized platform for federal agencies to market their problem-solving events. The program also designs resources and training, which have helped more than 100 federal agencies run over 900 prize competitions with public participation since 2010. Just a reminder to all of the participants that this webinar is recorded. At this time, I'd like to introduce our presenter this afternoon, Amin Mir. Amin is co-product owner of Code.gov in the Office of Solutions within GSA's Technology Transformation Service. On the team, he works on a range of topics, including strategy, product, outreach, and customer experience to help agencies meet the objectives of the federal source code policy. Cross-agency collaboration is pivotal in ensuring that agencies are doing their best to build software in a smart and scalable manner. In his previous work at GSA, Amin served as former program director for Performance.gov alongside his work on the CIO Council. He also has previously led teams at the Small Business Administration and the Department of Commerce on Business USA, SBIR, and a variety of other IT initiatives. So without further ado, I bring to you Amin Mir.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you for the warm introduction. I'm glad to be with everybody here on the call or the webinar today on this cold, kind of rainy day in DC. I hope to energize you to get you to become involved with software and open source software, and collaborating in the federal space is a very awesome challenge. And the Code.gov team is really excited to be a part of that. We're a small but mighty team. We have a massive mission that spans across government. What I'm going to be speaking to you today is a little bit about one of our goals, and that's to bring our government tech community a little bit closer together to help one another and to help expose the programs and the projects that you're working on to get some help, to get a little bit of collaboration, to get awareness on the really interesting software products that you're building in your respective agencies. So in Code.gov fashion, historical fashion, we always like to start our talks with a nice little photo and recap of federal source code in government. So it's not a new thing. Federal source code and code sharing has been ongoing since the 1940s, and you have a picture here of Grace Hopper. The US labs have been doing a wonderful job with open source. They've been working across their repositories to help people gain awareness of open source projects. So it's not a new thing. It's a very dated thing, but I think with respect to the last, I guess, 2 decades, open source development has increased dramatically. For us on Code.gov, I'll just tell you real quick, we started out with around, I think, 50 repositories on Code.gov, and today we're up to over 6,000 code repositories. So there's obviously there's a lot of information and a lot of really cool products being built, and we're trying to capture that, and we're trying to share it, and we want you to be a part of that and help share it a little bit better. So just a little bit of background on what Code.gov is and where it came from. It's from the federal source code policy that was published in August 2016. If you want to know the OMB memo, it's M1621. If you hear me refer to it every now and then, that's how we refer to it. It basically came about because the government spends about $6 billion each year on software, especially custom software. And at the end of the day, the code that is written is the people's code. And Code.gov's mission is to enable the public and enable agencies to publish the code that belongs to the American people. part of the federal source code policy was threefold. One, to develop source code each agency to develop a source code policy of their own. Another one is to update acquisition language to reflect where, if a procurement is coming out, that procurement officials take a look at what open source projects are available to them, in hopes to not have to replicate and replicate existing code. And finally, agencies are required now to inventory all their code. And so that's what's coming up on Code.gov that you'll see. This is basically a list, in a rough sense, a list of the projects that are being built by agencies, and these inventories are being updated on a daily basis. Lastly, the federal source code policy also said that agencies must release at least 20% of their code as open source. That part of the policy was a pilot, and it recently expired last year, but the Code.gov team is actively working with OMB to hopefully reintroduce that pilot and maybe make it a little bit more long-term. We saw a lot of success. We saw a lot of agencies working towards that goal, and we want to continue that great work. It really adds to the idea of the government going open source. And I will say this, feel free to ask questions about this we'll be taking questions at the end of this presentation, and I can come back and talk on these bullet points if you like. So for those of you who are familiar with Joe Castle, he is also on the Code.gov team. He leads most of the work, and he came up with an interesting diagram about a year ago. It basically showcases all the agencies and the repositories they had before the federal source code policy and after. And this is kind of a snapshot of who's doing this well. And if you see your agency and you're not doing it well, I think this talk will definitely resonate with you and give you an opportunity to bring a lot of what you're doing from a code perspective into light, and maybe get help on projects that you may need help with. As I said, again, we're growing. We're up to 6,700 repositories. We're very proud about that. And we're also trying to make that a little bit easier for people to access, because I'm sure folks don't want to go through 6,700 repositories. And so we're working on making that a little bit easy from an accessibility standpoint. Here's an example of what GSA has done after the federal source code policy. They actually have a portal of their own that they use to showcase what they've been doing from a federal source code policy perspective. They obviously have links to M1621. GSA has created their own OSS policy, and they're showcasing the code that they've created in an open source and how to implement it for instructions. I bring this up because I think it's really interesting to see. A couple other agencies have done this. I think NASA has done this. And we just want to encourage folks in CIO shops and CTO shops to use this as perhaps a model of, a great way for the folks within their agencies to see what strides their agencies has done to meet the M1621 federal source code policy. So here are some reasons why open source code is good in general. For starters, you have a higher standard of work. You have a lot more people contributing to your project, and as a result, you get a lot more eyes on it. And that kind of falls in line with number 4. But it also reduces the friction within the project itself. I've been on teams in the past where code has been emailed back and forth to one another. Some people don't necessarily have insight into the code that's being built. So this allows for a variety of team members and non-team members to take a look at your code and perhaps, give you some pointers, or just, be transparent. Motivation and recruitment. I like to go about and see what other agencies, even what other entities around the world are working on. It gives me motivation to see what I can contribute to. It gives me motivation to see what types of projects are out there. It's really, really cool. I'm sorry to interrupt. Can people please mute their phone lines? I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I apologize. So in terms of recruitment, you can also a lot of people, from a perspective of seeing if somebody's a good coder or not, can use open source as a way to see like what other teammates have been working on from other projects. And again, lastly, opportunities for collaboration. It gives you an opportunity to work with somebody in another agency, somebody you've never met, somebody in a different time zone, different technical experiences than you. And that's really, really fun, really interesting, really a great way to learn, in my opinion. And going back to number 4, more eyes on the code also means, from a security standpoint, open source tools and software tends to, be scrutinized a little bit more by people who are security experts. So that gives it a little bit of an edge, I think, from custom kind of closed source software. So you may not even know this, but you're already using open source almost every day. jQuery is an example we've used this in a previous slide, but also if you've read the 21st Century ID Act, you're also now inclined to use the US web design system for your front end. That is an open source project. So there are a lot of websites being website specific here, websites that are using the US web design system. That's an open source project. It's very intriguing, very unique. And so you're using open source every day, even if you don't even know it. A lot of banks do, a lot of insurance companies do. So it's definitely something that's out there, and it's not exclusive to the US government. I wanted to throw this in there. This is an article that we wrote, a blog post that we wrote on the 10 myths and facts about open source software. I can make this link available to you after this webinar, but it's really cool to see what people are thinking and what's the reality when it comes to open source. And so I encourage you to read this. We wrote it, I think, about last year. It's gotten a ton of views, some good feedback. So go after this webinar and check it out. Now, we did, as a part of our strategic planning last year, the Code.gov team, we really wanted to know who our customers were. And we took a look at a variety of different, we did some user interviews. We took a look at some analytics data that we had, and we came up with 3 different user groups that we wanted to target. So we have agency liaisons. Those are the folks in the agencies that we work with on a daily basis to bring about inventory and publish code. You have market researchers. They like to find and consume projects. So these are the people who are like scouring Code.gov and a variety of repositories to kind of see what's out there. It gives, and this can fall in the line with acquisition and procurement officials. They want to see what's out there, what projects are being worked on, and if there's a way to not have to duplicate. For today's discussion, I'm going to be talking about the developers and developer community. For us, this is a very important community. It's a very talented and very diverse group of folks, and they're there to contribute to open source. And this is really the engine that runs Code.gov, and it's the engine that runs the federal source code policy. The developers are instrumental in getting their projects out there for others to contribute to, and also having folks look at their projects as an aside. So we've listed the top tasks for developers. And you can read through these. Basically, they're actively looking for contributions from people, and this open tasks area is where we're going to focus on today. They contribute to the Code.gov platform. They contribute to their own platform and a variety of other platforms. Basically, they're the ones who really do the nitty-gritty work, in my opinion. And so here's a snapshot of the Code.gov homepage, where you can find where to explore open tasks. In the past, before our little mini redesign of the homepage, we had a button out there that said help wanted, and that's where developers and other folks could go in and take a look at what open tasks were available to them to contribute to. So if you're used to the old Code.gov site and the help wanted button, The new one is here on the bottom left, where it says explore open tasks. We've just made it a little bit easier for folks to get to other elements of our website and other elements of the federal source code policy. So that being said, imagine if we had hit the open task button. It will take you to a page that shows about 65 open tasks at the moment, where a variety of different people and developers of skill level can contribute to. So right now, the two that bubble up, or the three that bubble up at the top, you can see that this is the title of the project. And you may be asking to yourself, how does Code.gov know? How does Code.gov pull this in? So we have an API connection with GitHub, where we pull in this information and kind of showcase it on our front end, being the open task page. So if you are interested in open tasks, you can come in here, you can explore all 65, and here's a closer look at the top two tasks. So here we have it kind of broken down into the type, which is either sort of bug or enhancement in this case. The skill level could be beginner or intermediate, and the effort could be small, medium, large, and of course the skill level can also be advanced. The languages is obviously something that was not populated by the person who created this repository. It's actually the Code.gov team, so we should. But it also says what agency it's coming from, the last update, and of course the project. So this is just a little closer look at what we're seeing today. Now, you can always filter through the projects. For many people, we'll probably have more beginners than we have advanced users, but that doesn't mean that advanced users should not be checking this stuff out. The time required, small, medium, large. The type, so is it a bug? Is it content? Is it enhancement? Is it a good first issue? And I'll get into that a little bit later. So I'll just go back real quick and talk about these categories and where are they coming from. They're actually coming from labels in GitHub. Labels are basically what they sound like they are. They are labels that you put on your code repository to kind of showcase and highlight what it's all about. Here are some labels that GitHub has as a default. The ones that we're using in this example are bugs, enhancements, good first issues, and help wanted. By default, Code.gov pulls in any label that has the help wanted and the Code.gov label attached to it. These other labels are really good to have because it kind of illustrates your task. So GitHub recently rolled out with a good first issue, and this is basically issues that are good for first-time contributors. So people who are maybe new to GitHub, new to doing issues, new to commenting on code, people who just want to learn about open source, people who want to learn about anything that's code related. That's a really, really great new feature that GitHub rolled out, and we are actively working to also pull that into the open tasks. So when you see something come in the future, you'll see a good first issue as well, if it's a project that's deemed a good first issue by the person who is operating or managing the repository. So here are some other ones: questions, won't fixes, duplicates, documentation. You can always add labels to your issue or your pull request. Here's an example: CDC's microbe trace has a couple issues open, and here's one issue where the labels that are available to it right now are on the right-hand side that say help wanted, Code.gov. The skill level is for the beginner, the issue type is enhancement, and the effort is small. So I think this is a really cool example of an agency that's using these labels not only to just highlight for Code.gov, but also as a way to manage the issues that they're seeing on their site. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau also does this. They've also included in their repository here steps to replicate the behavior and the expected behavior. I think that's really, really unique, and that's really great for anybody who's really going to have to dig into what the issue might be. In this case, you can see the skill level is advanced, so I think that's one of the reasons why they wanted to tell you what the behavior is and what steps to replicate the behavior. But again, look, they've tagged in this label the Code.gov and the help wanted labels, and that's how we're pulling it in. That's how we're able to help showcase these issues in the projects. Here's just another visual of the variety of different labels that you can have in there. The colors, obviously, you can change if you like. So don't take this as a, oh my gosh, it's all over the place. No, you can obviously change the colors, but it does give people a first good glance as to what they're getting themselves into when they're taking a look at the issues that are open or the issues that are closed. Is it documentation? Is it what's the priority? And again, the effort and the issue type are very important. So this is just a cool little, I thought, snapshot of what you can kind of visualize on the GitHub GitHub page. Again, sorry for the blurriness, but here are some well-known labels. I apologize. So good first issue is one that this one is using. So the point of this talk is to get you jazzed up about discovering issues or open tasks on Code.gov so that you can go in there and perhaps help an agency that needs a little bit of help, or take a look at what they're working on and maybe provide some suggestions. And the other is obviously for agencies to put open tasks on Code.gov so they can be worked on. We've had issues closed out of the open task list. We originally started with very few. They've grown. The last time I checked, there were 42. Now, as I said today, there were 65. So there's obviously a need. The open source community is you. It's a group of individuals who work together to test and modify open source projects and products. There is no slap on the wrist if you're wrong on something. It's a great opportunity to learn. It's a great opportunity to share and to help, get to know one another in a developer sense. So I implore you to grow your community by joining the Code.gov open task list, because we have an outlet for you, and we want to encourage you to use it so that folks can help contribute to your project. Now, open source does not mean no rules. And it also doesn't mean no control. So here's an example. Here's a quick little snapshot of some projects that have been, worked on, but they always require some kind of level of review. And so here's a little photo of a project or a pull request that has gone through, and the merge of this pull request has to be reviewed by somebody on the internal team. So in other words, even if your project is an open task, even if your project is an open source project, at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of your team to moderate and ensure that whatever's coming through has been thoroughly tested, that it's been looked at, and that it's adding value. Ideally, also, you want documentation, you want commenting on the code. This is good practice, and it actually helps the next person in line contribute even more and perhaps make it better. I want to kind of close out today. This is supposed to be a short talk, but I've gone over a little bit with the code of conduct that GSA and Code.gov recently developed and published. This is something that I think would be useful for anybody in the coding community to use. Of course, we had to go through our legal department to ensure that this was something that we could use, the code of conduct. But it basically makes crowdsourcing code, sharing a place in an environment it's a positive environment. It's somewhere that participants can expect certain good behavior. and it's just a good thing to have in place before you go about any type of crowdsourcing or any type of open source development. So we have this available on Code.gov. I can show it to you in a moment, but I just wanted to bring this up as something that people oftentimes perhaps forget about, but it's definitely necessary, just to provide an even foot ground, so that people can work together in a collaborative fashion. So that's it. That's all I got. Happy to take questions. Happy to talk with you and help you develop open tasks and perhaps make your projects a little bit more rich in terms of helping people and wanting people to contribute to it. You can always access us by emailing us at code@gsa.gov. We're on Twitter. Code.gov is our handle. We have a Slack channel that it's called Open Source Public. If you're new to the open source community, please join. We publish articles there. We talk about new developments. It's a great place to just learn and meet your fellow colleagues. Of course, we have a newsletter. We have a listserv group. If you have a .mil or .gov address, please go ahead and sign up, or send the email to listserv@gsa.gov, and subscribe Code in the Body. You can always reach out to me. My name is Amin Mayer. I'm amin.mayer@gsa.gov, and we're on all the social media, of course. So that being said, I'm gonna, I think, open the floor to some questions. I believe Nikki is moderating those. So Nikki, please.
Thank you. Just a reminder, you can put your questions into the group chat. We do have a question from ACR. They ask, are you aligning those code repositories for mission support activities to USSM's Federal Integrated Business Framework? That's the Unified Shared Services Management.
That's a good question. So I do not believe that we are, but I will note that. That's very interesting. I did actually used to work with them, so I will reach out to USSM to see how we can get that across to them as well. Thank you for that.
Okay. So how in the presentation, I mean, you showed how the open tasks are divided up by skill level and time. How is that determined? Is that something that is determined by the person that is putting the open task up on the website, or is there some other metric that determines that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Sometimes that can be a little subjective, based on the person who is, I guess, moderating the project. They may think that a skill level is intermediate versus advanced versus beginner. And I think that kind of plays itself out when they notice that people aren't really contributing to it, or they are unable to answer a question or solve a problem that open task may entail. So luckily, the labels can be edited at any time. So if you notice that a project is not getting much traction, maybe it's because you're awesome and not everybody's up to your level. So I always encourage people to maybe not bring it down a notch and say, like, this project is perhaps for a beginner and the skill level might be low, or vice versa. If beginners are not able to attack that problem, let's bump it up and say, this is good for intermediate support, and maybe the amount of time this might take is a little bit longer. So it's a little subjective. Ideally, if a code repository or a project is maintained by somebody who's been working on it for a long time or has a lot of experience, they're usually able to gauge what that experience level might be. But that's a good question.
Okay. Just a reminder, keep uploading those questions. Do people usually tackle the open tasks individually or in a group?
Yeah, good question. It's usually a group effort, but it usually starts with one person kind of like initiating the request or initiating the work. That sometimes will encourage others to be less shy and jump into a problem. I've noticed that once an issue or a pull request has been made on a particular project, that kind of opens the floodgates for others to start jumping in there. So if you're somebody who is looking around and you don't see many people, don't be discouraged. I would say, just ask a question within the code repository through an issue, and you never know, it might catalyze others to jump in there with you. But we typically like to see collaboration across not only government but also the private sector as well. So when you work on a project together, it's a good learning opportunity, and it also familiarizes yourself with other people's projects as well.
Okay, we have a follow-up question to the first question from ACR, adding to the question on USSM and the FIBN. If one agency created code for repeatable back office task, which is a specific process or sub-process in the FIBN, then the code could be a robust starting point for other agencies to leverage. I guess that's more of a...
Yeah, absolutely. If that's a comment, that's a true comment. Yeah. An interesting example that's going on right now is there is the virtual foreign student, VSFS, I'm trying to remember, virtual foreign student. It's basically an internship that the State Department has where they're basically opening up their portal and making it open source so that other folks in either agencies or other national countries can use that shell of a project to create a similar service. So the point of open source is always to reduce duplication, because we have a lot of that in government, and that's something that impacts price. It impacts personnel and everything related.
Okay, we have another question. How is Code.gov collaborating with other AI or RPA initiatives, if at all?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So Code.gov was actually a part of developing guidance from OMB recently on AI and RPA projects. What we're hoping to do once that policy comes out, hopefully soon, is when somebody creates a project or a repository, that they'll be required to tag it on their JSON file, which we harvest, whether it's an AI project or not. So ideally in the future, when the guidance does come out and you want to search for AI projects or RPA related projects or any ML projects on Code.gov, there'll be a tag for that as well, and that will bubble up to the top. That's TBD, but that's kind of the vision.
Okay, what agencies, do you think utilize the open task section, and what do you think, the benefits have been for those agencies to, share their code and
Sure.
solutions through our website?
Yeah, so far, I think the top three have been GSA, and that's, I think, a product of, because the Code.gov team rests within GSA, and we have a sounding board there, but also DoD and CFPB have been the other two agencies that have been utilizing open tasks. CDC is also in there, and a couple others are in there as well. We're hoping to grow it, but I would say those three are the top ones so far.
Okay, are there any other questions?
I was gonna do a quick demo, if that's okay, if folks are still on the line, to quickly check out how to create a tag or a label. If people want to see that, I can show you real quick. So basically, hopefully folks can see, I'm in the Code.gov API issue page right now on GitHub. And if I scroll down and I find an issue, say this one is wrong documentation link, and I click on it. Over here on the right-hand side, you can see where I can add labels to this particular project. So I start typing in, and there's Code.gov in there, or help wanted. So it's basically what I'm trying to show you is it's really easy to do this stuff. And we'll automatically pull that into Code.gov and display it for you for crowdsourcing purposes. And then the other thing is with respect to the code of conduct, where it sits on Code.gov's main repository page is right in the same place as the README, the license files, and the contributing docs. It's right above here, and that's a good place to put it. So if you had any questions on where it belongs, that's probably a good place. You can put it on every page if you want, or every repository, but this is probably a good starting point.
Okay, are there any other questions? If not, I'd just like to remind you to please follow us at Code.gov on Twitter, on LinkedIn. We also have a Medium page where we post blogs. Today is Clean Out Your Computer Day. So please come and help us clean out some of these open tasks. We welcome you to come and visit and check out some of the things that we're talking about. It's also National Inventors Day, and it is Safer Internet Day. So we love to promote these days, these international days. It's also International Women and Girls in STEM Day. So again, we thank you for joining us. We'll make sure that there are no other housekeeping things that we must do. Please continue to follow us and make sure you follow challenge.gov as well and digital.gov. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.